Let's look at a simple web page. It's basically the same web page that we were looking at in the introductory module. It has a couple headings, a couple divs, a couple paragraphs inside. It also links to a style sheet called styles.css, but currently styles.css is empty, so we're not applying any author styles to this document. And right now the page renders like this. And you might look at that and say, well, who determines that the background is white and that hyperlink should be underlined and that heading 1 should be this much bigger than heading 2? Those are all settings that are in place because of the user agent style sheet. That's the default display that Internet Explorer gives you. If you ever wanted to see what the settings are in a user agent style sheet, you can generally find those on the internet somewhere. For instance, for Internet Explorer, there's a website called iecss.com, and this lists all of the Internet Explorer user agent style sheets for IE6 through IE9. One of the entries you can see here is that an anchor tag by default will have the text decoration of underline. And that is why an anchor tag, aka a link or an href, will have an underline when it displays. Now, as I mentioned in the slides, you can also have a user style sheet that is in effect. In Internet Explorer, you can see this by going to Tools, Internet Options, clicking on Accessibility, and there'll be a checkbox here, Format Documents using My Style Sheet, and I currently have that set to a user.css file that is in one of my temp directories. And that file just so happens to be opened inside of Visual Studio, but we can see it's currently empty. Let's try to do something interesting with it. Let me say that for all the text in the body of this document, the font size should be 150%. So I'm going to save user.css, and then sometimes to get this to take effect, you have to reopen Internet Explorer or come into a new tab. So let me come into a new tab in Internet Explorer and open that up. And you can see the text on this tag is now 50% larger than the text in the original tab before I edited that style in user.css. So user.css is at work here. But now let's come back to the page, and remember the page is including one of my style sheets, styles.css. And let me come in and edit this and say that the body here, the font size should really be 80%. And now let me refresh, and you can see that that is actually 80% of the original font size. So effectively what has happened is my style rule has overridden the style rule that was in user.css because author styles are more important than the styles that are defined in the user style sheet. So the browser is using my rule, it's overriding what's in that user style sheet. And I did want to point out that one condition where a style rule in a user style sheet can have more importance than a style rule defined in a author style sheet. And let me show you what that is. Inside of the user style sheet, I'm going to put exclamation point important here. And that means when the browser sees a body style rule coming from the user style sheet and a body style rule coming from an author style sheet, it's actually going to give more importance to this user style rule because of that pound important. So if I save that user style sheet and I come out and let's open up one more tab to make sure that we pick up the changes from that user style sheet, you can see that we're back to a large font size. So this style rule has the most importance out of those rules that are defined between the user agent style sheet, the author style sheet, and the user style sheet.